where excitement meets diversity 24/7. The male perspective is on live. 106 Live Radio. I'm saying it again and again so you all can get me. Where excitement meets diversity 24/7. We are live in Atlanta, coming to you from our Source of Wellness Media Group. We are the male perspective. Myself, Willie LeGrand Jr., along with
Ron Robinson.
and our host, which will be tuning in shortly, Don Miller. This has been a great day thus far. We have all things working in our favor and in our way, and things are going to be great again today. We're doing a continuation from last week, the impact on childhood trauma part 2. We had a lot of things that were mentioned in that conversation, and today we're going to piggyback and go with some other also with some other things that we were talking about. And we would like for you all to call us also at 404-464-8785. That will get you live on the conversation here at the Male Perspective, talking about childhood trauma. Everyone has experienced some kind of trauma in their lives, and what we would like to do is share that. Our sharing is like a testimony of that we've overcome and we've gotten over it, or we are being able to deal with it. And with that, that may help someone else along the way that feel like they don't know what to do or if there's anyone to turn to. But if they hear what we have to say, or what you have to say if you call in, that will give them some hope. And that's what it's all about, us helping one another, being there for one another, encouraging one another. Because if we can't help one another, then our existence pretty much is in vain. Because we're not on an island by ourselves. There are so many people that are impacted by things that are done, seen, and said. Yes, by things that are done, seen, and said. So what we're going to do is bring to the forefront. There he is. Speak to us.
Is that the one and only Mr. Don E. Miller?
Hey man, I'm glad you got them E's right. You know, just said Don E. Man, you gonna go and try to, slaughter my piece. But I appreciate you got it by time, man. I've been saying these E's for every week. How's everybody doing, man?
We all good, bro. We all good. Glad that you was able to join us. We know how busy you are. We know, the things that you're working on to better yourself, better humanity, better the people that God sent to you to help. So we grateful for you, brother. And, looking forward to just continue like piggybacking off of last week, dealing with childhood trauma,
Oh
the
yeah,
pros.
man. It's deep, man. It's the more, I explore this, man, the more I'm finding out, man, a lot of people, man, have really been operating from the trauma that they experienced as a child. You know, that whole piece that we look at in psychology that it's called the ACE, adverse childhood experiences. And a lot of times we overlook that. And Willie gave a powerful piece last week talking about what he had experienced as a child and how that impacted his life. And so I think a lot of people still struggle with that. And I know we left last week on a note when you was asking, was it does it change your personality? And as I stated, it does. You know, when you talk about maladaptive behavior, you're talking about negative behavior. And so when we start talking about personality disorders and things like that, we have to look deeply into why that personality has changed. Could it be something that happened during their childhood? So a lot of times, when kids are young, they get psychological testing to look deep into what was going on. And so as adults, even sometimes they have to get psychological testing to see what has really happened. Why are they acting the way they're acting? What are they doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they always struggling in certain areas? And that has a lot to do with, man, those adverse childhood experiences that
Right.
we end up saying that at least one person, at least you're gonna experience one in a lifetime, they say. So
Right.
uh,
So here's the thing about it. And like I say, away from agreeing to disagree or whatever, but this is what we do. So that way it's almost like as if, okay, Ron is thinking this way, you and Willie's opinion is this way. So just to, and I threw some things out there before we closed last week that kind of left us laughing and stuff like that. So so that people can really understand and know, let's go a little deeper. So when we're speaking about it, I was making the point that, so when I was speaking of personality and how you're wired, I was coming from the human temperament: sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, melancholy. Those type of DISC assessments, those type of personality traits, as far as how you're wired, the way you process information. Because then from there, so I was trying to make sure we get clarity on this trauma. If you're wired this way to think, like if these questions come, like this is the way you say it. If says, okay, is this a spider or is this an alligator? And we know that's a spider. Like, I don't think it's personality. Like, you just don't flip the script to now all of a sudden at 28 years old, because you had a traumatic situation, you're calling a spider an alligator. I think the way you answer questions, your initiative, all of those things, I was coming from that way. And then remember, I said, so do we do character development or personality development? Like we say, we got godly character, personality. So we never say, oh, he got a personality like God. We say he got godly characteristics. So people will sit back and say, Don, like we can develop young men's program, building mentoring program that'll develop character, not personality. So that's where I wanted to get clarity. And before you respond, just reiterating how we don't say, oh, a personality is he a whoremonger. We say, oh, that what's his character? Oh, he a hoe. Yeah, he or she, yada yada, this and that. So breaking down the difference in the characteristic behaviors versus a personality of, this is how Willie is wired, Don is wired to process information. That's how I was coming with it.
Well, although you've been wired a certain way, that wiring can change based on what you've been experiencing. It's almost like when we talk about post traumatic stress disorder. Well, before a person is exposed to whatever that stress may be, they were fine. They were fine. So if a person we take a military individual, person went in the military, had no mental health problems. They were doing fine. They go in the military, they experience war, they experience death, they experience all these traumatic situations. Now, that individual now becomes a little bit more paranoid about certain things around them. That individual may have night terrors, waking up late at night, uh, thinking that they're being assaulted in some kind of way. So it changes them. It has changed who they were when they first came in to who they are now. And and with counseling and with medication and with support, that person still learns how to manage life that way. So yes, it does impact that personality, because again, personality and character kind of runs together to a degree. So if a person has been exposed to something different, then quite naturally they're going to act different. It's simple. When you look at mental health is developed in three areas. One, it can be a chemical imbalance that could cause a mental health issue. Two, it could be a environmental situation, such as in the army, or a natural disaster of some type. And three would be genetics. So all that plays a role. But when we're talking about childhood experiences, adverse, and like I said, adverse means negative childhood experience,
Let
it
me
will impact how you are as a person.
let me ask you this. Hold on. Reiterate that you said mental illness is dealt with in three areas.
It can either be three ways that you can end up developing a mental illness. One could be some chemical imbalance uh, in your brain, chemical imbalance, which means you might have something off in that area, possibly. I don't want to get too deep into that. But then you got number two, you got environmental. That's when you get into the PTSD type of situations where things happen and you shift from that trauma that you experienced. Three can be genetics. So when you look at genetic pieces, just like when you deal with alcoholism, when you deal with a lot of other issues, genetics will play a role. one of the things I do in counseling, and one of the things that doctors would do, when you go to a doctor would ask the question, is there any family history of diabetes? Is there any family history of high blood pressure? Is there any family history of this or that? Well, the same thing in mental health. Is there any family history of anxiety? Is there any family history of bipolar? And there may be some family history there. And so when you look at the family history, the genetic piece says there's a possibility. So all you're doing the majority of the time is trying to see what has happened to this individual. What have they been exposed to?
So let me ask you this. What aspect of mental illness does psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health specialists, or whatever grasp hold of the spiritual piece of spiritual warfare with demonic infiltration? Because that's why I asked you to reiterate it again, because like, do we still do we include that, or do psychologists and mental health specialists say are spiritual enough or have enough spiritual insight to say they possessed with a demon?
Well, we got to look at that differently, because we don't see, because if a person does not have a religious background, then you telling them they were a demon, and you got to deal with this from a standpoint of from this standpoint, we're not talking about spirits in that regard. And even though that may be what's going on, we're talking about behavior. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at behavior, but we're not getting into.
So here's the thing. The reason
wait a minute. Stop for a second, because that's one of the problems we see in mental health. That is the flip side. That we talk about the spiritual piece, but yet we don't deal with the behavior that's going on. So if a person is not spiritually focused, then sometimes we got to usher them into that. But you can't. It works both together. So I'm not gonna say it's not spiritual. I'm saying you use both together. It's not one better than the other. It's using both. And that's the way I come from it. I don't come from it that somebody walk in my office and I say, hey, you possessed by a devil. I can't do that, because then when I do that, I'm not taking in consideration what this person has been exposed to. So it can't be just I go from it from a standpoint, well, you possessed by the devil. That's why you act in the way you acted. And so all it takes is you talking to God, and then you're going to be good.
No, because I'm fully aware, and I fully agree with this evaluating, listening, processing. Thing I'm speaking of is when you say the behavior attributes and looking at what the behavior is, when we go to scripture, they had a situation like this where every behavior attribute, if you highlight it, Jesus asked the Father, give me the behavior attributes of your son, and how long has he been behaving like this? Every one of those, psychologists and everyone will agree that is that they label that as mentally ill, mental illness behavior. Even the suicide attempts, all of the behavior, the tantrums, all of that stuff. After all of that, Jesus then, therefore, everybody is looking and watching, Willie, and he's saying, what you gonna do now? Jesus calls out and says, you deaf and dumb spirit, come out of him. Once the demons are cast out at that moment, everybody is amazed that the child has normal behavior. So to the point that even afterwards they're talking about it. So that's why I understand the evaluation, because Jesus even asked the evaluation questions. Give me the signs. How long has this been going on to the Father? When did this start? So Jesus was playing the psychologist and evaluating. So I just see it, Don, that so many times when I talk to people that go to counseling, when I talk, and I even talk to psychologists and psychiatrists, I got them as clients of mine, everything. Nobody, like, it's almost like everybody is afraid to cross that road and going into that realm. But it's a real realm that a lot of people, like, I mean, we got to agree, spiritual warfare is real.
Oh, well, that's definitely true, but I don't think it's so much the realm. I think we're giving people tools. I don't think it's a psychiatrist cannot, most of us can't start talking about, well, you got a demon.
Right.
You got a demon. We have to talk about things that could help an individual. We may be able to usher them in some kind of way, but really, a psychiatrist saying, hey man, you got a demon in you and you need to you possess.
Right.
And how does that help that client? Just tell them he possessed. Versus trying to help him with what is the behavior that's going on? What are some tools? What are some techniques to help you manage your behavior? That's what we focused on.
Right. And so
Let me
go ahead, Will.
the way that most officers like you talking about, Don, is going to handle that. And Ron, you saying you deal with people, some of these are your clients. The issue, first of all, because everybody's not coming from it from a spiritual perspective, and the people that you're talking to, a lot of times, they may not even have a relationship with God, don't even want to know God or care about God. But if you allow them the opportunity to recognize that there are some tools that are out there that Don is mentioning, that there are some tools that are out there that could help this particular individual, and then you gain their confidence, then later on, you may be able to introduce them to God and let them know that, hey, this is something that's going on here, and we recognize this as a spirit in the biblical perspective. And then they might say, well, okay, I understand that. So now where do we go from here? And with that being said, then you are able to say, okay, well, you ask the question, asking them, okay, well, what kind of behaviors are they exemplifying? Are they doing this at certain times? Are they doing that at certain times? And the parent or whomever it may be may say, well, yes, they are. And then you ask them, okay, so well, what are some of the other traits? And they begin to tell you. And then once that is recognized, then you, as a Christian, say you happen to be a Christian psychologist or a psychiatrist, whichever one you may be at the time working with this particular patient, then again, the confidence you have in them, they will be open up to hear you. Because a lot of times if you jump at somebody spiritually and they're not ready to hear what you got to say, and you automatically saying that, hey, your child got a devil, they're not going to receive you. They're going to probably take their child somewhere else or probably think that, hey, I don't know what's going on around here. I don't want to deal with this particular type of behavior coming from this doctor. And then, but what we have to do is, I understand the spiritual aspect
Hold on.
clearly.
All right.
Biblically, you're correct. Biblically,
Just so
Jesus,
just so Willie and Don know, I asked that question
yeah,
because I believe in all of the steps, everything done. Even like after we come from commercial, from station break, we're gonna talk about it a little more. But I just threw that out there to see in assessing a client, a person, at what point in time do you guys come to this conclusion, if you ever do come to that conclusion? Not do you immediately come to that conclusion. So I just want to make sure that you guys both understand and know I know processes. So it wasn't I want you to immediately, as soon as you walk in, you recognize and discern that he's dealing with a demon.
no, yeah, I didn't understand you to be saying it that way. I didn't take it that you were saying it that way. I was just you were going through the
That's
process
why
of
I'm glad
elimination.
I gave you some clarity.
So
Lord have mercy. You see what I'm saying, Don?
you're not the only
Well,
one.
well, the reality is that we'll talk more about this because this always has been somewhat controversial to a degree, but it's not because it's very simplistic. I think we try to make things one way versus another, and again, everybody ain't into the Bible. Everybody person where they are. What has happened to you? And I don't get into, we may talk spiritually because I do talk to clients about God if they want to talk about God, but I got to give them that opportunity because
Right.
it's about me showing love, not showing judgment. And you
And
got to
Don,
that you're not judging people
so
walking through the door.
we getting ready. Here's the thing. The reason I say that is because I want you to give that clarity to the listeners, because so many people have their reservations, especially when they grew up in a religious background environment. They have their reservations about psychologists and mental health specialists and counseling, which is so needed. That's why I'm asking these, so listeners can now get clarity to understand processes and what you guys can't, the issue you can't force versus we're here to help you. And these are the tactics that we're going to use. But now if the door opens for us to come in and usher in God, his presence, and the divine healing and spirituality, we're open to it, but we have stipulations and everything. So I'm glad we're talking about it, because a lot of people just don't know. You listen to 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. We are the Male Perspective. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
Bullying. It not only affects the person who is being bullied, but it can also affect the person who is witnessing someone else be bullied. Please let's remember to stop bullying on our school campuses and everywhere else. Join 106liveradio.com to help stop bullying.
A well-balanced lifestyle refers to a sustainable way of living that promotes your overall health and wellness. According to Dr.
Yeah, what's
Jason,
up, man?
from brokenness to wholeness, Team Gray are international inspirational speakers. Their prayer is that you wellness and harmony.
No, you don't want her. I guess you can.
Wellness involves creating a harmonious balance between your
All right.
connection with God,
Okay.
health, or vocation, family, relationships,
I'll check with her, and I'll let you know.
and growth goals. Some healthy self-care,
I'll check, man.
regular physical exercise, a balanced
All right,
diet,
man.
sleep, and effective management of stress levels, all while cultivating meaningful relationships. You are a multifaceted human being. Therefore, we here at sourceofwellness.org encourage you to explore your innate passion and interests that bring lasting joy and deeper fulfillment. As you soar to a higher dimension, Team Gray's counsel to you is to optimize, begin the journey of becoming excellent in spirit, effective, and live based on your God-given gifts and mandate. It's time to function at your best and live up to your greatest potential.
Hi, this is Michael Lancaster. Hoping you'll join me every first and third Sunday on Life Talks with Gathering and Friends as we get into the Word of God and talk about its application to life.
I taught for 20 years until I started forgetting my lectures.
Eventually, he had to quit. Getting his early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard, but it gave us time to take control of the situation together.
I can't imagine going through this without him.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Are you thinking of changing your marketing strategy? 106 Live Radio is the solution you need to promote your goods and services. We are offering special advertising rates on our fast-growing radio network. We can also help you create an audio commercial or a website banner that fits your business needs. It is just that simple. Visit our website at 106liveradio.com for details.
Bringing you the best shows and music 24/7 on your favorite radio. It's 106liveradio.com.
The Male Perspective is partially or in part sponsored by Contact Electrical Services, LLC, servicing all your residential and commercial electrical needs throughout the metro Atlanta area. And remember that without Contact, you don't have power. Give us a call at 678-698-1101. Reach out to Contact Electrical Services today.
Join us on The Male Perspective Wednesday night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. We will have a weekly dialogue regarding various issues from a male perspective.
I searched the earth for something that could satisfy. A peace for the hurt I had buried deep inside.
Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to tell everyone else about 106 Live Radio.
106liveradio.com. Call us now.
Come back.
All right, we are back. We are back. 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. We're talking about today the impact of childhood trauma, part 2. All right, Don, go ahead and finish where you had left off.
Yeah. You know, I pray for clients, man. I offer prayer for clients. Matter of fact, there have been some clients that said, no, I don't want you to pray for me. I said, okay. So I give them the opportunity to get prayer or not get prayer, because I don't want that to be a barrier. If they coming to see me, they come to see me for an issue. And that means whether it's gay, straight, whatever, I deal with them about the issue. I'm not here to condemn. Okay, that's not my goal. My goal is to provide whatever service I can to help them with whatever that issue may be. And so we have to be careful that we're not being judgmental when we saying, well, you got this going on, you got that going on. We don't know. That's not our job to do that, to be judgmental. Now, there are Christian counselors, and they have to be even careful. You have to be careful, man, because people, if I'm going to condemn somebody, that means I can't deal with nobody, because everybody may have something they're struggling with, man. So my job is to be a conduit. And that means I may be the one that can usher you in to a place. But my goal first is to see what has happened to you. That's my focus. And I don't get into, well, you got a demon, don't have a demon. I tell people to do some self-help. Yeah, it'd be great if you go see your pastor. Go talk to your pastor. But I think one of the things that's bad sometimes is that our ministers need to be skilled on more about, not skilled about mental health, but how to hand it off to the mental health professional and not be condemning at times with individuals. Because a lot of times you just saying you got a demon, and the person saying, okay, what do I do about this demon then? How do I move forward in life? And so we gotta help, we gotta work more together, because I think that's one of the reasons why the stigma about mental health is so powerful in the minority community. It's very powerful that people was, I ain't going to see no counselor. I ain't going to see nobody. I ain't crazy. Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm going to just pray about it. Yeah, that's what you hear. It's the same thing when people talk about medication. I ain't taking no medication, but you got a headache. Why? I'm going to trust God. I ain't got nothing to do with your level of faith. But if you in pain and if you sick, you need to go see a doctor. And there's one called Jesus, yeah, but Jesus also done anointed some people to do the work. And just like a counselor, he's got counselors out there that love him and need to be there to help usher people into that.
But see,
we can't condemn people, man. We got to be open, and we can't be saying people, you got a demon in you. We can't do that, man. That's not a good move.
I don't know why you assume I just brought it into condemnation, but
that's
okay.
what you say. If you say people got demon, man, you condemn people.
That's not condemning, because condemning is to judge, to say sentence you to hell. Condemning you is as if that's the thing about it.
You're going to tell a person, listen to what you
No,
say.
no, I'm not saying I broke down to you about the steps. So if we get into this realm, we should talk about it. I didn't just say I didn't say
no demon stuff, man.
Right out in saying it. I just asked you as a mental health specialist.
No, we don't talk about that.
How do you guys in that world approach it this way? Because I never hear majority of psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health specialists deal with the spiritual warfare perspective. That's the clarity.
What is the spiritual warfare perspective?
Mind.
What are we really saying?
You ain't ready to go there. I can go there, but you're not ready to go there. So don't even, let's go ahead and continue to move forward and everything. Because you coming off now as if my question brought it as if it's a condemnatory environment now.
It would be.
Okay, what we're talking about is the impact of childhood trauma.
So let's therefore,
and that's what I've been talking about from the jump. And you went into this piece about the spiritual aspect of things.
Because I bring the spiritual piece on the show, right?
And I'm talking about childhood trauma.
So we can deal with, because generational curses, demonic warfare through spirit, through what you trying to say that don't transcend down through bloodlines? We trying to say that the enemy, we got a whole Bible to bring clarity to this. So you saying I threw this out there, but I bring the spiritual perspective. I thought it's the male perspective, but I thought I bring the spiritual perspective. You bring in the balance with the psychological. They work hand in hand. They need balance. Yes, ministers, pastors, those of the religious sector need to be able to have balance, to be able to say, after thorough evaluation, I brought in and referred Don Miller, such and such, Dr. such and such. Yes, because there's processes to this. That's the thing there. I'm fully aware of the processes. But for some particular reason, in the spiritual realm of good and evil, kingdom of heaven, kingdom of darkness, Satan and God, is not dealt with. So therefore, I brought it up because in most environments in your world, it's not talked about, Don. And so I just brought clarity because we have listeners to be able to see, oh, they got a balanced perspective. They both go hand in hand. Yes,
They
warfare
do go hand
is
in hand, but it ain't my job. It ain't our job to do that, man. That's
so
not our
you,
job.
never mind, because you're the one showing that is a problem talking about it. So forget it,
It's
Don.
not a problem talking about it, Ron, but you asking the
I just asked when
profession
do
to
y'all
do something that a minister need to be doing. That ain't my job.
You could have easily said, Ron, you know what? We can refer someone to it, and I got a couple of pastor friends or such that. I asked the question, then you
I
make
answered your question. I answered your question.
It's my job to deal with it.
I got you right now. This is the way that it's going right now is the spiritual aspect is true. The spiritual aspect and the counseling aspect is also true. The thing is, there was trauma somewhere in this particular child's or adult's life that happened to them, and later on, after finding out everything that happened, it may have been hereditary that they experienced certain things. And then once that level has been recognized, then we could address that with getting them some spiritual guidance. Don may later on, after he says sometimes he usually pray after person or the family members, he could pray with them. He's inviting the spirit then, the spiritual aspect then, and then if they will accept that, then they can go further. He can tell them to talk to their minister, to their pastor, or whomever, or someone that would be willing or ready to address that spiritual aspect. Otherwise, the family member that has brought that particular person there or themselves will not be open to receive anything spiritually because they may not be ready. But when they allow themselves to hear that, then every behavior is a spirit. That's true. No doubt. Every negative, every good behavior is a spirit. Everything is spiritual, whether we want to recognize it that way or not, but it is spiritual. And therefore,
I'm glad you said it.
Most things have to be recognized and treated as such. But as mentioned also earlier, if that person does not allow you to go that route, then you cannot do that.
Right, which
but
is
only
totally
through
understandable.
invitation. God has allowed people to get understanding and get lessons to train in order to be able to handle
Jesus didn't even perform healing if a person rejected it.
Well, I understand, but the Bible said that he couldn't even perform miracles in his own hometown because they felt that they knew him.
Listen carefully. He says, in other words, he was never aggressive with trying to throw himself on people. But at the same time, Jesus respected y'all professions too, because afterwards there is so many instances where he says, go and be examined, go continue thorough follow-up. No, stay here and remain and become stronger and do the follow-up that's necessary for you to become more and more effective.
I think that Don was getting there if he didn't say it yet, but I think he was getting there because he knows all of us three guys here on the show. I know that we all confess Jesus as our Savior, so we're therefore Christians, and that we believe what the Bible says And so in that aspect, when he introduces or feel the need to introduce someone to the spiritual side of what the behavior is, then only will that person be able to receive the help that they need, whether it be through guidance, whether it be through him there ministering or talking to them. Only then will the change occur. The trauma will continue to be the same if a person you're talking to, no matter if it's a counselor or a layperson or just somebody on the street, that they're talking to them and you hit them where they're not ready for it, the damage is still done. They still walk away with trauma. And what we're trying to recognize now is how did this trauma happen and the effects of this trauma and the behavior of the people that it's affected. If we cannot agree on what's going on with a particular person, the efforts are in vain. The person is just coming to sit down for a session of a conversation.
So Willie,
and then they walk away the same.
Piggybacking off of what you just said a couple of minutes ago, if everything is a spirit attached to it and is spiritual, who keep bringing up what you experienced and shared with us that happened to you when you were 6 years old, who keep bringing that up when you're 36? God clearly, if everything's a spirit, if God clearly ain't holding you in that corner and paralyzing you. So if everything is a spirit, you just said it. Who's bringing that to Willie's thought and causing Willie to go back and reminisce, and now he's afraid or whatever overtakes him or comes upon him that causes this? If everything is a spirit and the spirit is attached, who's bringing that to that person's thought process?
Okay, I said everything is spiritual, so I understand what you're saying. So what happened?
And there's a spirit attached to it.
Let me address that since you mentioned it. Took me back to last week. Now, when people bring things up, they may be bringing things up out of curiosity. And when they bring things about a curiosity because they're wondering and they're looking and trying to figure out something, then it's not a spirit in them that's causing them to bring that curiosity or that attention that you're getting from them about stares or questions. It's not a negative spirit. Then they're just curious. And then if I take it to another level, then that's a spirit that's operating in me that shouldn't be, because I'm taking it to a negative perspective. Now, sometimes people put more stuff or more attention to things that's not necessary. And then we call it spiritual. The devil get a lot of credit for stuff that he doesn't do because of the fact that we don't want to take responsibility for our own behavior. So now, mentioning to you what you said, you understood what I was saying. So it's not a spirit that brings somebody to the attention or brings to the attention what happened to me.
Who is
I just told you. I said it's the curiosity of the particular person that's talking to me.
What you mean? That's talking to you?
Yeah, that's asking me, okay, well, what happened to you? What is that?
No.
That's curiosity. That's not a spirit.
Okay, no problem. Y'all can go ahead. Moving on. Moving on. Moving on.
It's amazing, man, that and I still say this, and I'm gonna stay with it, that we talking about childhood trauma. And trauma could be, and even if you want to go from a religious standpoint, some people have been traumatized by their pastor. Whether it's been sexual, whether it's been a lot of stuff, they've been traumatized. So if they've been traumatized by a religious leader, then how they dealing with spiritual stuff at that point? So when I'm talking about trauma, we talking about trauma. That's it. I'm not getting into, whether it's spiritual or not. I'm talking about trauma. And how you manage trauma has a lot to do with how people are acting, man. And it does have a direct correlation to mental health issues. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not getting into
who do we deal with?
No, we dealing with trauma, man.
I got a question about trauma.
We going into trauma, man. That's what I want to stick to. I want to stick to trauma.
I can't handle certain levels of dialogue.
What's your trauma? What's the question you got concerning trauma?
Wait a minute, man. You're talking about nobody can't handle certain levels of dialogue, man. What you talking about?
Dialogue, because you came back on the air about as if I never mentioned condemning a person. You mentioned that it is condemnation. So watch this.
If it's condemnation in one area, man, you done took this whole conversation somewhere else, man.
If it's condemnation that I said a person that you say is condemnation, if you tell a person they got a demon, so what is it not condemnation if you labeling me as crazy because I got to take medicine?
I never said you was crazy. That's never what you said.
I'm using it as an example.
But you don't tell people they're crazy. Let me help you with that.
Watch this. If you sit back and think about it, in our community, even in dealing with childhood trauma, they got to take their medicine. They go cuckoo. They go crazy if they don't take their medicine. So therefore, we condemn a person that's
misinformation, man. That's misinformation.
Oh,
so misinformation, Ron. My point is the reason why so many people are suffering in our community with mental illness is because of those thought processes. That's why they're suffering. The stigma associated with it. So a person if you got a heart issue, do anybody talk about you taking medication for heart issues? No, because it's a stigma associated with it, and it's about an impairment.
Why is it condemning?
It's about an impairment, a mental health impairment. It's not that you're crazy, man.
Why is it condemnation when we mention demonic infiltration? Why is it condemnation?
I didn't say. I said, Ron, if somebody come to a counselor and the counselor says you got a demon, don't even know the person, don't even understand what is going on with that person. That's why I said childhood trauma, getting some information first and foremost to try to get a dialogue with the person. I'm not saying they cannot have it, but my point of it is that you gotta first get to know who you're dealing with versus assuming something. That's all
So
I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm
oh,
saying that our job as mental health professionals is to see what's going on with the person and begin to put plans together to help them. Talking to their minister may be part of it. Getting involved with a group of individuals may be part of that plan. But we can't just say, well, hey, this guy got a demon. We got to say, hey, this guy got an issue. Let's start seeing what this issue is all about. And then start ushering them in. If they're not spiritual, they may not want to talk about God. They may not want to mention God. And so what do I do with that guy then? I said, well, you ain't, and some people do that. Some people will refer them to other places. Some people won't deal with a guy who may be having issues with his sexuality, or a woman having issues with her sexuality. They won't, they'll look at it as sinful and then don't get a chance to even have a dialogue with the person. That's what has happened so many times in our community. So what that has done is caused people to say, well, no, I ain't crazy. No, it ain't that you got to be crazy. It ain't considered crazy. It's considered an impairment. It's just like if you went to the doctor for a heart problem. You can go to see a therapist for a mental health problem, for an issue you might be dealing with. There's so many people dealing with anxiety right now and depression, but they won't go see someone because somebody says something wrong with you. So if you go talk to somebody, man, you crazy, you get some medication. Yeah, okay, well, keep acting out like you acting out. When in actuality, there's things that can help you be stable versus you being unstable. That's what we do, man. That's what we
Okay.
do. That's all we're doing. And we'll work with pastors, whatever. I ain't got nothing against that piece, but I'm saying that we have to be very careful with our language when it comes down to people. We just got to be careful with that. And that's why our community is suffering like it is now because of that language. Hey, man, he crazy taking medication. Yeah.
The thing about that too, Don, is that we do have to be careful in whatever arena that we're in, but especially during this particular type of conversation that we're having with childhood trauma. Because if you go to, I'm believing that if someone comes to you and you approach them that way, then you've also increased the trauma which they thinking they're going to get relief from.
You're
and
re-traumatizing the person, man. You're re-traumatizing.
But the thing is that when an assessment is made, we go from there to make positive affirmations and whatever else it needs to get that person relieved from that particular trauma that they're experiencing. Trauma occurs also when there's a harsh disagreement with somebody that knows that they're going through something and they're not really being heard. And if you're not being heard by somebody that you're seeking help from or somebody that you care about, then again, the trauma stays there. And a lot of times in a young person's life, that's what had happened. They went to their parents or the guardian or somebody that they felt that they could trust and shared something with them. And then they probably got yelled at. You did what? Why did you allow that? Why did you participate in that? Why did you say that? Why did you go over there? And then here it is now they traumatized. Say, okay, well, I know not to say anything about this again. I know not to say anything concerning that because of the fact that, hey, will I receive these same repercussions? I'm thinking that I can go to this person for help. I'm thinking that if I talk to them, that they could show me a better way to do what I did or help me to find out why I did it.
Will, God has not given us a spirit of what?
Fear.
Okay.
And we're talking about.
Hold on. You were 6 years old. I'm not going to talk about nobody else trauma. I'm going to piggyback off of your testimony. At 40 years old, if fear is overtaking you, and we have biblical reference that clearly fear comes from where? Who's attacking you with fear? Who's attacking the child, the rape victim, everything with fear? Where does fear come from?
Are you asking me, did I fear at the time?
Like fear, having fear, or it caused you fearful thoughts or whatever back then, whatever. If fear, most victims, regardless of the trauma, the level of trauma, whatever, they encounter fear. They're afraid to move forward because they're afraid to, who's keep attacking them with fear? Does it just so Don, as a mental health specialist, where does fear stem from? How do we deal with this? Because I'm afraid of. So where does fear come from?
Well, spiritually speaking, fear comes from the devil, from Satan. That's the Bible teaches that. Now, fear in the natural sense of the world, fear comes from those things that are uncertain to people. So therefore, they do not operate. They do not do anything because they don't know that spirit of fear that they have, that fear that they're experiencing, they don't recognize it as a spirit because they're not at that level. But for the person that is at that level and have to be spiritual, they recognize, okay, so the devil is just bringing this up to me so that I cannot go forward. I have to suppress those things. As Don mentioned last week about give yourself a PASS so that you can PAST, get rid of the PA, so that you can leave the PAST behind you. The person that's experiencing trauma from something that happened in their past must recognize that they cannot and will not go forward in their life from where they are right now until they allow themselves to forget that. And then what spiritual person would do, a person that knows and have been learned, that spirit of fear would come into their mind. They would say, I rebuke that spirit in the name of Jesus. They would cast that aside and say, devil, you a liar. In most cases, that's what they would do because that's the way that they believe. But again, for that person that don't know that, they're wondering, okay, who do I talk to? Who can help me out with this situation? And then that's when they go to Don. And then Don would be able to help them out in that particular area. Okay, Don, I'm having these thoughts. I don't know why I'm thinking like this. And so we're getting ready to go to a quick break here. We extended our run over time, but we're getting ready to go to a quick break, and we're going to come back, and Don is going to give us something to think about why they would come to him when they can't do anything spiritual. We'll be right back. You're listening to 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7.
Live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is so common that it's likely you know at least one person with this functional disorder. Some IBS facts are 13 to 20% of individuals, approximately 5 to 7.5 million individuals are living with IBS. People of all ages have IBS, from young children to the elderly. The economic burden of IBS is $6.5 billion annually. Individuals with IBS miss on average 13 days of work per year, leading to a further $8 billion in lost productivity. The primary symptoms are what we call the ABCDs of IBS: abdominal pain, bloating, constipation, and diarrhea. Symptoms can come and go, so you might feel well for a while only to get symptoms again. For more information, please visit badgut.org.
Self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. Self-monitoring is power. Visit managerbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
The Male Perspective is partially or in part sponsored by Contact Electrical Services, LLC, servicing all your residential and commercial electrical needs throughout the metro Atlanta area. And remember that without Contact, you don't have power. Give us a call at 678-698-1101. Reach out to Contact Electrical Services today.
3 powerful words with the same letters, now, own, and won, could change your daily life, business, or ministry. Will you go for it and win 3 in a row? Tic-Tac-Toe of Life, the Now, Own, and Won Anointing is an inspiring new book by evangelist Dr. Curtis Minter that can help you understand the vision, passion, faith, and attitude necessary to fulfill your destiny that God purposed you to have. Available at Amazon, your local bookstore, or at trilogy.tv.
Do you need a written game plan for your marriage? Here, you will be empowered to shed some of the heavy weight from the past. These practical tools can be implemented today. Start pursuing intimacy, effective communication, and be the interdependent mate you were designed to be. Are you ready to be vulnerable and transparent with your spouse? You will be challenged to take your relationship into the next dimension of perpetual growth. Check out Mr. and Mrs. Epic Journal After I Say and Tanasha Gray.
We are broadcasting live from our Atlanta studio. 106 Live Radio.
We used to rock the house something like this. Whoa.
All right, we're back. There you are, Don.
Well, I just want to share this. One of my listeners sent me a survey. Said a survey from 2021 found that 11% of Americans read the Bible daily. Trends in reading habits over 4 years shown that the majority of Americans never read the Bible. However, in 2021, this number dropped. So, you know, that says a lot about what's happening on one front. But as I stated earlier, it's about the trauma that someone has experienced. And I believe that trauma plays a major role in personalities, behaviors, things of that type. And that's basically what the therapist is doing. The therapist looks at the behavior. That's what we look at, and we try to focus on why is the person behaving like they're behaving, what has happened to that individual. And so our goal is to try to support that and find out ways and techniques and strategies to help them. The spiritual aspect, that is important, that they do get some spiritual guidance. But again, we got to look at what is our profession about? What is our goal? What do we supposed to be really doing? And one of the things, every counselor got an oath, and that is do no harm. And so doing no harm means I'm not going to do anything to harm you. Before I harm you, I refer you. I'm not going to do anything to make things harder for you. I'm here to ease what's going on with you. And that's the way I look at it as a therapist, is working with the religious community. You know, like I said, we offer that. If people want it, people don't, I'm cool with it, because at the end of the day, what did I do to help you? You know, and I deal with suicide on a regular basis, man. People want to commit suicide. People want to hurt other folk. And so the whole deal is, let me sit you down. Let me help you deal with your emotions versus your emotions managing you. Let me help you manage your emotions versus your emotions managing you. So things like that would get them in a place where they sit down and talk. And then maybe we can tackle on some of that those other things that they're dealing with.
So Don, give me solutions, because we know you got to leave for you working on got your thing going on. Give us solutions real quick for the listeners of, okay, I'm dealing with childhood trauma, like mentally. It takes me to a place. Sometimes I choose to drink. Sometimes I choose to check out. I don't want to be bothered. I don't do crowds. Give me some solutions to help that person not only come to the conclusion that they got to go get some counseling, sit down and talk with someone, but then even in the process of submitting to counseling, the necessity of doing the homework that counseling provides.
Well, a couple of things could be very simple. You know, the why, what's going on with you, and then giving them activities such as, hey, maybe instead of you drinking, you need to go talk with some friends, spend time, go to church, pray about it. See, those are some things we can interject if that person is open to that. Now, if they're not open to that, you would say stuff like, okay, so let's look at why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, is it constructive or destructive? You know, one of the pieces that we use, CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, we want to switch your thinking, your reaction to your thinking. We want you to think instead of react, because when you're reacting, you're not considering the consequences. So everything we're talking about is trying to change the way you think. So if you said, hey man, you're drinking. Okay, let's look at your drinking. What's the end result of your drinking? Well, I may have some cirrhosis of the liver. I'm spending a lot of money. Okay, so if you're going to do that, then what's the consequence? Those are the consequence. So the reward, what could you do differently? Let's replace that. Why not go work out? How about doing that? How about listening to some nice, calm music, gospel, jazz, something to relax yourself? So we try to throw in relaxation techniques. So there's a lot of stuff we can do to try to help people, understand that we have to give them positive alternatives. See, because when you're dealing with mental health or any kind of issue, you're going to either do one or two things. You're going to either do something destructive or constructive. And so we're trying to get you to understand those behaviors are destructive. So let's come up with some constructive behaviors. Reading your Bible, reading a nice book, going to a nice movie, going for walks, changing your diet, get around friends that are more positive, get in a support group, AA, NA. It's all kind of support groups you can get with. When people lose someone, they deal with a lot of grief. There are some grief support groups that people can go to have someone to talk to who has experienced what they have experienced. So we try to throw in things like that to help a person, but we first got to see where they are and try to help work with them and try to
Don,
get them to see it.
do you agree? Someone made a statement that drugs manage the mood, but it doesn't deal with the root of the issue.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. That's why you use drugs, because drugs is a what? Mood altering substance. So I'm gonna use this to change my mood. Well, when that mood flip back, now look at all the damage you've done. Because a person be on some crack, they don't spend all their money on crack. Now the crack is gone and everything else is gone with it. So you still got that issue. You see what I mean? So
Right.
it's just a sense
just
of
temporary.
self-medication. It's just
It's
a
just-
medication for the moment.
Right. It's just
Candace.
like Motrin or Advil anesthetizes the nerve that
Yeah.
tells you your knee hurting.
Yep.
You
It
know,
works
but
like that. Every drug is a mood altering substance. It's to change the mood. But what could you do to change your mood that's not destructive? See
Right.
that? If you did some deep breathing, you'll calm down. If you went on a walk, you'll calm down. Because whatever that issue is, you don't want to multiply that issue by having a drug problem. See, because now you got the issue you had is still there, and you got drugs on top of it, and you broke. You done spent all the money. So you got a real issue.
Right. Don, have you ever had a client that say money is not an option, and technically they don't care what you're charging? I'm just coming to talk, dog. Like, I really ain't trying to apply what you're talking to. My therapy here, and so therefore it might be 6 months, a year. They're not really trying to apply solutions. They just really paying you just to listen to them.
That's cool, because at the same time, see, they may come in saying that. They may come, well, I don't really want to help. I just want to listen. But trust me, eventually something that I'm saying is resonating with them. Because if it wasn't resonating, they wouldn't keep coming back. See, that's the thing they're saying to themselves. But all the while, they coming to be heard, but they also coming to get some advice. They coming to get it, man. And so I say, come on, because if you sit there long enough, something gonna resonate. Something I'm gonna say is gonna get to you. That's why I firmly believe that God sends certain people to me. I firmly believe that, man. I firmly believe it's about mission, not money for me. It's about mission, bro. So I
Right.
really believe that.
Look, we're gonna take that quick 30-second top of the hour break and come back. I want to go ahead and let you give listeners something else. I'm gonna ask you a question so you can give to listeners. You're listening to 106liveradio.com. We are the Male Perspective. We'll be right back.
Where excitement meets diversity, 24/7.
Welcome, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to talk about the 106 Live radio platform where excitement meets diversity 24/7. Our mission: to positively influence communities through broadcasting, publishing, and other forms of communication with the use of the internet. And our vision is to impact communities, help fulfill destinies, and build legacies that go beyond our local reach and Atlanta, national, and global horizon. So here's a little bit about us. We're based in Atlanta. 106 Live Radio was initially established in 2013 in the city of Atlanta. It is owned and operated by its parent company, Source of Wellness Media, LLC. 106 Live Radio has made a positive impact on the lives of many individuals and businesses within our local Atlanta communities. Our radio station is your
106 R&B and throwbacks on 106 Live Radio. Atlanta's music leader.
We are back. We are back. You're listening to 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. We are the male perspective. Talking to our host here. He has to get out of here. He has another agenda. Agenda.
Agenda, man.
My bad. I ain't gonna try to say what you. I don't want to. I don't want to. Say what you're working on, bro. I want it to be a big surprise and ultimate culmination. So, no, my bad. He got another event, another matter to tend to. So, listen, Don, real quick. I'm struggling for the person that I'm struggling with childhood trauma. Whether they were raped, whether it was abuse, whether it was bullying, severe bullying, whether it's seeing my mother beat in relationship after relationship. I'm struggling. I'm an adult. I have kids, and I'm doing my best. I'm at my wit's end, and I haven't told too many people. How do you get this person to actually start making steps to move forward? That I'm paralyzed. I want help, but I just can't trust nobody.
Well, that's the piece about it. When you have to be sympathetic, empathetic. You have to be willing to be there with the person. I mean, there's been times, man, I've sit and cried with a client when they talked about certain stuff. When I dealt with women who have been raped and been abused, or kids who have lost a father or lost a mother, and I go right there with them. So one of the things I think is so important with a therapist is to be able to be in the moment with the person, to develop a rapport with the person, to be able to listen more than respond. And listening is really, for me, a way of responding. See, I'm always twisting stuff. My son always said that. But if you listen, you'll get to see that piece that I said, what happened to you. And so if you listen long enough, you building trust at that point. You build trust because people have been hurt, man. And a lot of times they are paranoid. But if they come, the indicator that they came is a sign that they want to be heard and they want to be helped. And so I think you be there, you be in the moment with them. I think that's important because they feel like you're there with them, so they're willing to open up. They're willing to share at that point if you're there with them. If you take time to say, hey, let's talk. Let's talk. Let me hear you. Let me hear what's going on with you. What happened to you? That's one of the questions I always ask. What happened to you?
Right.
What brings you here today?
Right. Let me ask you this: from the world of mental health specialists and all of the academia, the credentials, everything that you guys have, do you guys ever stop to think for the purposes of connecting with the community? And when I say community, that are victims, people that need mental health specialists and counseling. Is there ever let's come together? How can we, whether it's a free session, you can ask questions, we come together, create an environment, whatever, because I'm just wondering how to connect. There's so many millions over here that need the hundreds of you guys. How do, outside of advertising for the business side, where do you guys come together to say we're doing a mental health day in the park where we got people cooking, we got food, and we got people to come to where you can connect, get information, and kind of break the ice of these.
That's a good piece. It's more work has to be done in that area. I think that we miss a lot of opportunity. I think our churches need to work more with us. I think community organizations need to work more. We need to work more with them. We need to look at it from a partnership standpoint.
Right.
We do that at times. I've been at certain events where I've shared about mental health. This is a platform here that I've used. And not so much about the business aspect. It's just about getting the information. It ain't about the money. There's a lot of clients that I see, and it ain't even about them paying. They can't pay. I say, hey, man, I'm still going to see you because it ain't about that. And so I'm looking at other ways to get it out there. I would love to do some stuff like that, man. Just have a dialogue,
Right.
and that's what we're doing tonight, which is helpful to the people out there in our community. So,
Right. And then
we got to do more of that.
creating an atmosphere to educate more and more.
Yeah. And
Because
it doesn't have to be costly. I've done some workshops with a couple years ago. Did a couple of workshops at some libraries. Just talked about mental health. It was no cost. Just had it open for people. So I may look at doing some things like that the first part of the year to kind of
Right.
get that out there. Just a free opportunity to just talk. I was there, and was a nurse there, and it was other mental health professionals there. We just getting information out to people. It
Right.
was free, and we had some food. So get some folks some food. They'll show up.
They're gonna show up. Hey, they're gonna show up. Jesus said we can't send them home hungry. We
So I
got to be
appreciate y'all brothers tonight, man. Keep it moving. I appreciate you, man.
for sure. Appreciate you too, bro. Like I say, looking forward to it. Can't catch up with you in a couple of weeks because I know next week is Thanksgiving. So we're gonna all be doing that turkey day and getting some physical strength and health, for that big day. So thanks so much and everything. That's
Appreciate
it.
y'all, man.
Mr. Don E.
Tell
Miller.
us how you can be reached right quick then.
Well, you can reach me at theeffect.net. That's TheEeffect.net. That's theeffect.net. You can send me an email at dmiller@theeffect.net. And I have IG at D_Miller at Instagram. Okay, that's it. That's how you get.
Next time, give one website so folks can go in there. All them 25 channels.
Okay, man. Go on, man. Go on, man.
Out,
Man. I see y'all later.
All right, be blessed, bro.
Take care, man. Y'all be blessed. Bye.
So, you listen to 106liveradio.com. Listen, 404-464-8785, 404-464-8785. We're talking about dealing with childhood trauma. And we understand and we got to be able to know that counseling is so needed. I mean, you need counseling just because, especially in our African-American community, growing up in African-American communities, and we experience so many different levels of trauma, whether internal in the house, through abuse, through bullying in the neighborhood, all of these environments, counseling is a good thing. I mean, you need counseling. The Bible admonishes us to seek wise counsel. You need counseling for business endeavors, things that you're about to embark upon, for financial investments, you counsel. So I want to encourage everyone to understand the necessity of counseling in all arenas, but at the same time, being that we're talking about dealing with childhood trauma, the ramifications for not actually getting that counseling, the ramifications of that thing that's still trying to weigh you down, that burden. Like Willie, we talked about, and like I mentioned beforehand, we understand from a scriptural perspective, God has not given us a spirit or the spirit of fear. So to let you guys know that fear is a spirit that comes from the pits of hell. So now, as I asked beforehand, Willie, Willie, to piggyback off of the thoughts are coming, because if we eliminate Christ, as I mentioned last week, if we take Christ out of the picture, take God out of the picture, and let's go from what the atheists believe. The atheist doesn't believe in anything spiritual, God, none of that stuff. They don't believe in the Bible. There's no God, but they do believe in moral versus immoral, good versus evil. So therefore, to be immoral can't be good, can't be inspiring immoral behavior, right? So therefore, where does those thoughts come from? Even if we look at it like that, now you and I already know and we agree that everything is spiritual. So therefore, the thoughts that try to paralyze you and traumatize you because the situation is not happening. Let's say so at 6 years, you were 6 years old, right, Willie? Correct. So at 6 years old, Willie, let's just say at 36, 30 years later, that event, that traumatizing situation, that's not taking place in your life, right or wrong?
Of course not.
But it's thoughts that causing you to reflect back on that, right?
Well, the only time I have those thoughts is when somebody engage in questioning. Otherwise, I do
like
not,
questioning based on the scars.
That's it. The evidence that's there. That's what trauma does. Trauma leaves evidence. As a matter of fact, Paul suffered trauma because he had suffered what they call a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan sent to buffet him. And what that meant was that the wound of the limp that Paul suffered for the rest of his life was a reminder of something that he had to deal with. Not that he didn't believe or trust in the Lord Jesus, but that he had to face when he thought he could do something on his own. And then he was reminded that my grace is sufficient for thee.
Really?
Yeah. Hey, you went there, so
Paul didn't have a limp.
Well, call it what you want to. It's a messenger of Satan sent to buffet him.
So do you know what that? It wasn't no literal physical thing that was in him. It wasn't a physical defect.
Okay. All right.
I'm just saying.
Okay,
like,
fine. We're not going to do it. But
Jacob had this.
Now,
Jacob, see, you and Don always get mad when y'all wrong.
Okay. Jacob, his thigh, Jacob. But anyway, the trauma that I was dealing with, what he was talking about, only came about when someone questioned me, or then they would look at me, even at that age. Because see, there are a lot of times I wouldn't even go swimming. I like to swim. I wouldn't go swimming. I wouldn't play basketball. Anything that I had to go to expose my body, I would not do. But then later on in life, I began to build up courage. A lot of times we don't give our parents enough credit for helping us to overcome certain situations, because a lot of times the relationships aren't or were not there to where you had that encouragement, you had that dependency, or you had someone to tell you, hey, or affirm you, most of all, that's what I'm saying, to affirm you that, hey, everything is okay. Don't worry about it. And so that's what, Daddy did that a lot of times, that he said, hey, don't worry about it. Because what I was doing, I would put on a T-shirt, but to play basketball over under my jersey. But anyway, so the thing is when the trauma would only come the thoughts would only come when somebody asked me a question. You don't live in the past all the time, because you would never go forward in the future. So that's what happened. When somebody look at me or question me, then I would relive the event over again, like I mentioned on last week. You only relive something whenever it is brought back to memory. But a lot of times when, or you may be alone, and these voices, as you alluded to, come into your head. Well, what about this? Well, what happened there? Why did it happen? What did you do? What you should have done? Those things do come into play.
So, Satan can only attack you with what you're familiar with. So therefore, remember that the scripture says, bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. So therefore, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing to captivity every thought. So that's where it's like, no matter what, people got to be able to understand that the forces of evil, the spiritual wickedness in high places, all of those forces of Satan are designed and sent. They come in to infiltrate. Here, the thing about it is, people got to be able to understand, like Jesus says, that's the thief's job, to steal, kill, and destroy. And now, I didn't necessarily come to stop that. I come to empower you to be able to overcome that. And so a lot of times with childhood trauma, Satan tries to bring up the past. He tries to afflict you with fear, sometimes just to paralyze you from going forward and operating in the fullness of the power that God wants you to operate, or that Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection has given us to walk in. So when you mention, if me and my majority of the time, one of my brothers, he's a retired Marine. So through counseling, where majority of counselors don't believe our childhood story. So that's where it's almost like when you sit back and you're looking, like most people, when I tell, like most people think like, now, like I am because who I am because of the power of God, because of God's grace, His mercy, the love, the power, everything. I walk in the fullness of that fully. And I understand at the same time, growing in Him, dying to self. Remember, Paul admonishes, the Bible says you must die to flesh. So by me crucifying self to try to sit back and me going in His presence, it's not that I'm almighty, and it's not like I've arrived. I just seek Him to pour in me the strength needed to overcome this, to get beyond this, to not allow this to weigh me down.
Well, all right. Now, what happened? You said that no one would probably believe your childhood story. Like,
ain't no need going there and everything. People sit back and get mad and everything. But that was trauma, right? We don't label this trauma. Me and my brother and talk. People count.
When
people are labeled.
When you were younger, it affected you.
No.
Oh well.
Like, you got to be able to understand, it was no room to cry tears. It was no room to express pain. Like, once again,
But that's
so
trauma within itself.
but here's what I'm saying. So I can attest to, it's almost like this. It's like we can attest and understand, because then right after that, Willie, right after that life and growing up in that dictatorship and all of the abuse that came with that life, then we went straight to the military.
Well, that was your getaway.
No, it wasn't necessary, but it only magnified the hardcoreness. Like, it only magnified, get over it. Oh, well, you're going to be all right. You better, like, you're going to beat me until I cry just to tell me not to cry. See, it's things like that. So I just say that to say, is if you want to label it as trauma, okay, cool, that's great. And so therefore, it's processes that I took differently versus processes that my brothers had to encounter that causes us away from. So I'm just saying, is the fighting, the bullying, the everyday this, the everyday that, the home life. So when people listen to that, especially when you sit back and saying that's supposed to be a loving, nurturing environment, well, that wasn't the case. That was probably the most dysfunctional environment. So it causes people now that when people sit back, and eventually, we thought about we gonna all eventually get together. Maybe, psychologists have told me y'all story needs to be in a movie or something. Like Antoine Fisher ain't got nothing on us. So I just say that to say my strength, me, is in my relationship, my encounter, my Damascus Road encounter with Christ. That now I pursue him. It wasn't through education. It wasn't through sitting down talking to a therapist 24/7. And yes, that's needed and that's cool. But here's the way I gone to therapy. I mean, you could take a 3 and 4 hour ride to Charlotte, and me conversing and talking with you, to me, that's therapy. You see what I'm saying? Like, versus, so all I'm saying is you got to be connected. That is cool to be connected with that person. That, to me, that's therapy, because I'm gonna be respectful, I'm gonna be mindful, I'm gonna listen to you, and I'm gonna process. I'm gonna, like, notice how I say, wait, Will, I want to go back to something you said. I'm always processing and listening. So to me, that's therapeutic. That's therapy, because then it's great because you don't think like me. So you're not going to say the same things I want you to say. So to me, that's therapeutic. And people just have to be able to know how to get in an atmosphere and an environment conducive enough for you to be able to actually get the therapy needed. And you got to be able to know how therapy can come in the different ways it comes. To some, it's playing basketball. To some, it's therapy because I go to the gym. It's some guys that look forward to where when I walk in the gym, guys say, oh yeah, it's on now. Because he going to start him talking trash, and they're going to start talking trash. And man, this just made my day because the day been so hard. I look forward to Monday nights when they go to the gym. And when Big Ron walk in there, he going to set it off. And we loud. There are women that work out. They say, boy, I tell you, this here is the atmosphere on a Monday night. But I realize, and all we doing is showing people how to be free, how to take off the worrying, the cares of the world, being burdened down with this and that, and just relax. Just enjoy life. Just look at other people and see you're not the only one going through.
Well, see, right there, that part right there, what you just shared, that they're not the only one going through. So, in essence, something happened, as you mentioned earlier, something happened in your childhood to cause you to be the way that you are now. And since we're talking about trauma, you said I can call it trauma, but since we're talking about it now, that's what happened. And it changed you and your outlook. It changed you and your brothers, your outlook and the way that you begin to handle and process things. You said, of course, it wasn't therapy going on, but the way that you all handled things later on in life, you found God. And that was your source, that was your help, that was your counselor. And then here it is now, you giving counseling in a therapeutic way at the gym. I'm going to call it counseling at the gym, because of the people that have gone through trauma themselves, maybe that day or maybe in the past, and the stuff that you were saying to them then is helping them to be able to let that past in the past go to the past. So when you keep doing that, it's opening doors, it's opening eyes, it's allowing people to express themselves, and especially their emotions. And it helps them. So
Right.
you are being a therapist.
Exactly.
Also.
And that's the thing about it. That's why I'm able to look at it like that and stuff, and be able to know that, hey, we all need it. We all need that environment, that atmosphere that allows us to relax, to be able to just express. I think too many times we got too much of striving for perfection and being held accountable in that regard, and as if you're not anybody or you're a nobody because you haven't reached a certain plateau or a certain mark. You listen to 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. We're at the Male Perspective. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Autism, a complex developmental condition affecting the patient's ability to interact, communicate, and progress, has not one, but many subtypes. Reach out to a local group to see how you can participate. One way to bring awareness to this issue is to educate the new generation in fostering acceptance and kindness towards the autistic community. Ella Auti, a story of a 4th grader battling society with autism, is a great way to educate your kids and start important conversations. In light of the pandemic, the autism community continues to face the worst of challenges. Make it a goal to donate as much as you can to your local Autism Society of America to further their efforts and encourage their unrelenting support for their community. For more information, please visit nationaltoday.com.
Are you satisfied with the quality of your marriage? Do you desire to soar on a higher dimension with your mate? If so, why not start today? Treat every day as a Valentine's Day in your relationship. Weekly, on the Epic Marriage Celebration, we endeavor to assist you as you pursue a fulfilling marriage. As pioneers, Jason and Tanasha Gray, along with other couples, have discovered some key elements to thriving in their marriage. Togetherness is one of the foundational ingredients that leads to a healthy, intimate connection. Togetherness is not just being in the same place at the same time. Real quality time is often nurturing to the soul. It includes focused attention on each other and quality communion. Join Jason and Tanasha every Wednesday at 10 to 2 p.m. on 106inspiration.com, powered by 106liveradio.com.
Are you thinking of changing your marketing strategy? 106 Live Radio is the solution you need to promote your goods and services. We are offering special advertising rates on our fast-growing radio network. We can also help you create an audio commercial or a website banner that fits your business needs. It is just that simple. Visit our website at 106liveradio.com for details.
Bringing you the best shows and music 24/7 on your favorite radio. It's 106liveradio.com.
We are broadcasting live from our Atlanta studio. 106liveradio.com.
The Male Perspective is partially or in part sponsored by Contact Electrical Services, LLC, servicing all your residential and commercial electrical needs throughout the metro Atlanta area. And remember that without Contact, you don't have power. Give us a call at 678-698-1101. Reach out to Contact Electrical Services today.
We used to rock the house like this. Whoa.
All right, we are back. 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. You're listening to The Male Perspective. Thank you for joining us on every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here on Social Wellness Media, powered by. We've been talking about the impact of childhood trauma. We know that trauma is something that is serious and cannot be taken for granted. I'm also inviting your calls, 404-464-8785. Call us with questions, tell us about some experiences that you've had, some counseling that you may have had, and how you have overcome that situation, or if you're still dealing with it. Feel free to give us a call. We welcome those calls. Listen, so what we have here now is that the impact of childhood trauma has affected a lot of people. And as the guys was mentioning earlier about some of the things that, as a matter of fact, a few minutes ago, Ron was talking about he wasn't really going to be open up about some of the experiences that he had experienced growing up. But everybody finds a way a lot of times, depending upon their environment, how to be able to handle certain traumas that come up in their life. What's really important is that you have somebody there to talk to. And when you have that person there to talk to, then they act as a counselor, so to speak. It's somebody that you trust, somebody that cares about you and you care about them. Now, all the different kinds of trauma that we have experiences with, here it is, say for instance, right now, that if a child, a young man or a young lady, or a boy or girl, depending upon the age group, or it really doesn't matter, whenever you're talking to your parents were talking to you and you did something that wasn't right, that it was wrong, here's what they did. They start yelling at you. What are you doing? Are you foolish? You lost your mind? Quit doing that. Come over here, sit down. And that's what you hear all the time. You traumatized by it because the first thing you do once somebody starts yelling, you flinch, because it's an immediate response to an action. Is a flinch, or somebody would raise their hand to that particular person, a child or whatever. They would raise their hand, and what they would do, they would flinch again in fear because they did not know what action would be taken for their behavior. So they were traumatized. So now, what do? Later on in life, when somebody does something to them or around them, they repeat the same actions that they had received. They start yelling at the person, they start yelling at about the situation, or they may even start talking to themselves. I was at a location today. This young lady, she probably was about maybe between 20 and 24. And she was out in the parking lot dancing, doing cheers and fighting the air. But when she came into the establishment where I was, she sat down and I spoke to her. We talked, and I asked her, was she a cheerleader? She said she was, but she was on the dance team. But later on after that, she started talking to herself, carrying on a full conversation. Don mentioned PTSD or mental illness. She had something going on. But if I engaged her in conversation again, she snapped right out of the situation and began to talk. I didn't know her well enough, or the environment wasn't conducive enough for me to begin to try to talk to her to find out, as Don would say, what happened to you? Something happens to everybody in their life. Trauma occurs one way or another, through action, through abuse, through yelling, through bullying, whatever traumatic activity that may happen. And, as a matter of fact, we gave the definition on last week about trauma. Refers to a scary, dangerous, violent, or life-threatening event that happens to a child. And the age of a child at the time was 0 to 18 years old. Some people still act like children because of the behavior that they have or that they do. Only because a lot of times they hadn't been able to express themselves, and they feel that they always have to react the same way, doing the same thing. People need help. And if you don't get help, you're going to continue to experience that trauma. Give us a call, 404-464-8785. Express your trauma. Tell us about how you feel and how you dealt with your trauma. Another thing that happens usually with trauma is the fact that, say for instance, I remember a time I used to go pick this lady up for church. And what had happened to her, she had a fear of dogs. What had happened when she was younger, a puppy jumped on her, a dog jumped on her, and it traumatized her. And so whenever she would see a dog later on in life, she would run, or she would just stand still and freeze. And so I had asked her, I said, what is it about a dog that what is it? She said, well, a dog jumped on me when I was younger. And he ran, he was running at me, and he jumped on me and knocked me down. And he didn't bite me or nothing, but he was just playing, but I didn't know that. And so what happened later on, some years had passed, and she was an older lady now. She was out walking. She went to the grocery store. She was walking back home. Because of the trauma that she had experienced when she was a child, there was a dog at this house. He started barking at her, and she started running. I'm reminding you, she was an older woman. Older, when I say older, she was in her late 60s, maybe somewhere, maybe in her 70s. I don't know. She looked to be that. But anyway, so she started running. And as she began to run, the dog ran after her. Only thing she did was she had fear from being traumatized at a young age. She was running, trying to get away from this dog. And she eventually made it to the porch of this house. Because she did not deal with the fear of that trauma that happened with her when she was younger, she made it to the porch of this house and started knocking on the door, and the dog came up to the porch. The dog didn't mess with her. He just stood there at the bottom of the steps. So it was said by the homeowner, where the dog ran up to her and where the lady was, that she had a heart attack. The woman had a heart attack and died because of the trauma that she experienced and the event that happened that day of that dog running at her. A lot of times, could that have been prevented? Maybe so, if the person had had the dog locked up. Maybe if later on in life she had been exposed to a dog in a more gentler way. Maybe that fear that she had wouldn't have caused her to run, wouldn't have caused her to be fearful of the dog barking. Or maybe would have caused her to maybe pick up something, an object, to defend herself. But yet and still, that trauma that she had caused her to die that particular day. And it was really sad, because that trauma was not dealt with. Was that drastic? Yes, that was drastic. But see, the thing is that trauma in everyone's life is serious, no matter how it is. Swimming, for instance. A lot of people don't swim because of the fact that they're scared of the water. Why are they scared of the water? Because they've heard somebody else talk about, hey, you don't get in the water, don't go in the water, you could drown. Well, why would you tell a child, every child, a baby or a child, they love to play in the water? They're not afraid of it. Remember, for the first 9 months of their life, they was in water. But so here it is now, this child isn't afraid to get into the water because someone else that has a fear of water or trying to swim put that same fear in them. Do not project your fear on someone else. If you're afraid, then keep that fear to yourself. Get help with that and try to overcome it, and then pass something forward to the other person. Now here it is, a child is afraid to get in the water. Why? Why you don't want to get in the water? Because I might drown. How do you know you might drown? That's because somebody planted that seed in their head. We have to be careful with the things that we say, especially the words. They have so much power to them. The words that come forth can produce trauma because of the things that we hear. Remember, I mentioned a few minutes ago about yelling at a person. If you're yelling at a person, demeaning them, that's trauma because they're not experiencing that. That's not a natural behavior for somebody to start yelling and fussing at a particular person. Why would you do that? One thing that we must realize and think about seriously is that we must think about, do we want somebody to treat us the same way that we treat them? Do we want the same repercussion? Do we want to bully somebody if we don't want to be bullied, or our child to be bullied, or grandchild, or what have you? If you don't want that type of behavior to come into your family, don't put it in somebody else's. Childhood trauma is real, and it impacts lives forever if it's not dealt with. If you don't have the right counseling, if you don't have the right support, you will forever be scarred. Remember, there are internal wounds and then there are external wounds. The external wounds is a reminder of something that has happened in the past. The internal wounds you can't see, but they sometimes come out through a person's action. What do you mean they come out through an action? If a person was whipped as a child or beat, or some people call it child abuse, depending upon the age range you are in, it's kind of funny because if you look at a person that grew up maybe in the late 60s, 70s, and maybe some of the 80s, that a parent whipped their child, they disciplined their child based upon how they were brought up. And the Bible says that the rod is for the backside of a child. And what does that mean? For the disobedient person, that rod, the switch or whatever is used to make correction. And sometimes those corrections brings about trauma in a person's life. So we have to be careful about that. If you're presenting that kind of action, make sure that person is understanding what you are doing. Because if you're just doing something because you feel that it had worked in the past, well, it worked for me, my mom and my daddy did it, then that's not the right reason. Do it because you explain it to them what is being done. Because remember, every action has an adverse reaction. It could be adverse positively or adverse negatively, but it has a reaction to it. So remember, we appreciate you for joining us today on The Male Perspective. Give us a call. I'm sitting here waiting on your calls because I know you all have something to say. I know someone has experienced something. 464-464-8785. It's at the bottom of the screen. Also, what I'm going to do now is put up on the screen, a lot of times trauma bring about adverse thoughts, well, negative thoughts. And what those negative thoughts are, it may be thoughts of suicide. Because when people do things and nobody's hearing them, they're like, why am I even here? Nobody cares about me because everybody's yelling at me. Everybody's cursing me out. Everybody's telling me I'm not going to be anything. You just like your dad, or you just like your mom. Well, maybe they are, but don't tell them that in a negative way. Tell them, show love to them, show compassion towards them. Miss Patricia Watley was on here a couple of weeks ago. She was a teacher of a school down in Florida, and she started that school based upon how she felt about the education of children. And she said that she would give positive affirmations to the child every day, to the group of children that she has. If we do that, remember that we won't have to worry about children or people committing suicide. The activities from their early ages cause them to be a certain way. Ask them what happened to them. They may tell you. And then when they confide in you, then you be that person that says, you know what? I think we can work with this here. Provide a solution for them because they're not going to know whether they're 8 to 18 to 48. They may not know. They're still dealing with trauma. I laugh because we don't take it seriously sometimes. And when we don't take it serious, things can happen to people. Also, there's the NIH, the National Institute for Mental Health. Trauma produces mental health issues. If you don't believe me, when you see a person walking down the street and they're talking to themselves or they're fussing and swinging at the air, that's a mental health issue. There's something happened in the past. Some people usually say, I've heard somebody say, well, hey, they just got a hold to the wrong drugs and it's got them acting crazy. Well, maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe something happened in their life that traumatized them to where it pushed them to go to drugs or some kind of other form of, for the failure of a correct word, some other form of relief or intoxication. They chose that kind of lifestyle and it hurt them. But yet we talk about them. Look at that, they're crazy. If they're crazy, why don't you try to help them out? What if somebody in your family dealt with a trauma and you want somebody to help your family member out? We don't think about that. But we have to because trauma impacts the nation. Trauma impacts a family. Trauma impacts society. Trauma impacts individuals. And we only point the finger. Why not point them in a direction that can give them help? Why not point them to your ear to where you can listen to them? Help them out. You're listening to The Male Perspective on 106liveradio.com where excitement meets diversity. Another thing, too, that's really interesting, talking about trauma. Trauma comes because of certain exposures. If a person is exposed to a certain thing and they're not ready for it, it puts fear in them. When a person is exposed to a certain thing and they are not ready for it, it could put fear in them and then they will start acting a certain way. Trauma also happens whenever a person is expecting something, but they get a different kind of reaction from it. What do you mean? Well, if a person expecting you to to be kind to them, and you give them something, and what are you giving me this for? I don't like this. You spent how much for this? That's traumatizing. I knew this young boy one time. He had given this some flowers to to this young lady, and she says, "These things look like you just picked them up. They look like they about dead." And the sad thing about it, this fella, he spent all the little money he had at that time, and he thought it was a good gesture. It was to an aunt. He gave it to his aunt. Somebody, she was caring for him at the time, and he gave it to his aunt, and she started talking about, where did you get these from? And he was crushed. And for a long time, as he started to grow up, he would begin to mistreat ladies. He would begin to mistreat young women. And even the older women, he began to disrespect because of the trauma that he had from the experience of him being young, presenting his aunt with flowers, which he thought was nice because she was nice to him. I don't know what kind of day she was having, but apparently it wasn't a good one. And because of that, for a long time, until he was able to get some help, someone saw him and asked him what was going on in his life. And he had told them. And once he did that, he was reminded, according to what he's saying, he was reminded that everybody is not the same. He eventually forgave his aunt. He never told her what had happened, but their relationship had become strained. He never told her what had happened. But there was a difference in their relationship. He would begin to act out certain ways. He would begin to say things and do things, and sometimes wouldn't let her know when he was coming home, only because she had traumatized him. And he said, you know what? I don't care what she said. I don't care what she does. But we can't, that kind of attitude you have to be careful, because that's a reckless type of attitude. And then you may go out and do things also out there while you're gone that could traumatize somebody else because you're hurt. And remember, you always see this being said, hurt people hurt people. So be careful who you're hurting. Be careful who you're bullying. You don't want that kind of atmosphere. You don't want that kind of behavior. You don't want that kind of recourse. And it's something I was watching last night. This young man, I believe his name was Travis Randolph. He used to play for the New York Giants. 25 years old. This was back in 2021, I believe it was. He was dating this young lady. He was staying in Florida at the time. He had got injured, so he couldn't play anymore at the time. So he was going out with this young woman. He hadn't committed himself, but she thought he had, because he was a young man, had money, had a little prestige, had a nice car and house. So she started dealing with him, and he with her. They started hanging out and stuff. And so she went through his phone one day, and he saw a text that a young lady had sent him. Now, remind you, she thought that she was in a relationship, but he wasn't. He was going through the motion because he didn't ever really commit himself. 25-year-old, got money, fame a little bit or whatever. So she was traumatized by what she saw in the phone. So they showed the video, because what wound up happening was that she told her brothers and friends, hey, you know what? Go shoot his crap up. Can't use the word that they said, and so what they did, they got together out of her trauma, being hurt because he was seeing another woman. This trauma had affected her to so much to where her brother and another guy was shot. The other guy was killed in the process. Trauma because of what she said, because she was hurt, because he was dealing with somebody else. And what wound up later on happening, that they allowed him to be able to say that he defended himself by taking forth these actions, which the trauma of the young lady had against him, because she was hurt, she had somebody else take it out on him. Trauma causes the person sometimes not to care. So we have to, again, be careful about the things that what we do and how we present ourselves, because it could cause life or death. And in this particular situation, one guy was almost paralyzed, but the other guy died because of trauma of somebody else. One trauma also that's kind of very serious, especially in childhood and young people, that impacts them, is being embarrassed. So like a child goes to school and they're embarrassed, the grades aren't that good, and they come home with a bad report card. or they get a report card at school and their friends see it. Oh, you're stupid. You don't know nothing. You just dumb. Now, how does that impact a young man? It hurts his feeling. But if he's young, young enough, he's sensitive. A lot of people are sensitive sometimes, and they don't know how to handle certain criticism. And so this young man here, he becomes a recluse. He starts hiding. He becomes withdrawn. And so what does he do then? He just stays away from people. And because of that, his grades begin to even fall further and further behind. And with his grades falling further and further behind, he falls behind. And then he begins to hurt really, really bad because he doesn't know what to do. Trauma is serious, it's painful, and it hurts a lot of people. We don't want that kind of trauma in our lives. We want to be able to experience joy. We want to be able to experience understanding and care. We're getting ready to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Male Perspective on 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7.
Every moment, no, I can't forget. Gotta say, I won't change. You're the reason that I am like this. Ain't a day go by.
All right, I'm back. You listen to 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. Right now, I'm getting ready to go into the godly perspective. And today we'll be talking about Psalms 147, verse 3. He healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. That's Psalms 147, verse 3. We've been talking about trauma, the impact of childhood trauma. And it's really serious because here it is now, we're talking about I'm gonna get it together in a few seconds. He healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. That means that whenever a person has been injured by something that has hurt them really, really seriously, what they do is that they turn to the Lord. They ask him for guidance, they ask him for help. And what he's able to do is give them exactly what they need. He healeth the brokenhearted. That means that whatever it is we're going through, we have given it over to God and allowed him to take control of it, because there is nothing that we can do. We don't know how to handle things on our own. That's why we're to seek wise counsel. That's why also to go to counselors, to go to psychologists, to ask them to provide a solution to what we are needing. Because in fact, if we don't, then we can hurt ourselves also, along with hurting other people. God has put people in place to help. And with that help comes responsibility of the counselor. That is to provide the most accurate help that they can. But also remember again, if we cast all our cares on God because he cares for us, is that he binds up the wounds. What does that mean? He covers up, he puts salve on it. He fixes it to where it was almost as though it never happened. To bind up means to cover, to give support to strengthen, to make strong that particular area in your life that was hurting. Being that you was hurting, and you know now that there's somebody that can help you, which is God. You allowed him to do just that, and that was to be there for you. And whenever he's there for you, no matter what happens around you, he has your back. We've all had people say, well, hey, I got your back. Don't worry about it. We down like 4 flat tires. Well, sometimes that person that says that they down like 4 flat tires, all of a sudden got air in their tires and they leave you because they don't want to deal with the trauma that you're dealing with. They don't want to be there really to support you and to help you through whatever it is you're going through. But with God, he's there. He's always going to be there. He will never, ever leave you, nor will he forsake you. That means you don't have to go it alone. He's that insurance that we have. He's that assurance that we have. He covers us and he's with us. So therefore, what is there to fear? I know earlier Ron kept talking about fears of the devil. Yeah, which it is. Fear has torment. It brings about doubt. It brings about unbelief. It causes your faith not to even exist because you're not believing anything but the negative which you see. So now here it is. You have God on your side. He's there to support you. He's there to heal those broken heart. Trauma hurts you internally. Trauma causes you to doubt. Trauma causes you to hurt. Trauma causes you to cry. But just remember, when you give your worries, your traumas, your doubts, your fears, your anger, your frustration, all of your pain to God, there is nothing else that you need to worry about, because he's there and he's going to help you. He's there. He's going to support you. He's there. He is willing to rescue you. All you have to do is, Lord, I give it to you. I cannot handle it anymore. I was not built for this, but he was. So allow him to do so. So now, if you listen to the Godly Perspective, this has been Willie LeGrand. Have a great night.
Just look over my talk about little old me. It's Woody, girl, and I'm so glad that you came on down. So we can spend some time together. Oh, baby, even mess around. I think you look so good, you look so fine that you make me shake and shiver. But in the end, when it all goes down, you know the Woody Wood will deliver. Let's ride. Let's ride. Oh, come on, just raise your hands in the air and let me hear you say, oh yeah. Oh yeah.